the work that we have downstairs, and just kind of a bit of context overall for today, and why I'm here and how I brought these people with me. Well, they brought me with them, rather. Downstairs in Gallery 25, in the sculpture gallery, is a kind of pavilion/shelter type building. And it's very much thanks to these wonderful people and a lot of the wonderful people in the audience, who I'm looking at right now, that project had come to be. I worked with intervention architecture, so Anna, who couldn't be here today. And Anna's practice is very much in social intervention, so her architectural practice is looking at interventions into the way that we live and be with people. And we've spoken a lot so far about materials here today, and the work downstairs is very much about materials, but infinitely entangled into material justice is social justice, is health justice and land justice. You can't really have one without the other. And so I myself, as an asthma sufferer, I would say rediscovered clay and rediscovered mud building techniques or cob building, natural materials, because I was thinking about the way in which I've had to live with lots of precarious housing, and so those were the main inspirations behind that body of work. But what I want to say to each of our material practices is that it's infinitely tied to human and living practice, in that Simon also teaches and does workshops around the country in these methods. I think that Prashant has held many workshops, so these people are also incredible educators, and through their practice it's not just about reworking with the material and activating the material, but really activating practice with other people, with community and with each other. And so on that note, I'm going to move on to my very first question, which we can go in any order. But each of your practices challenge dominant systems in the built environment, whether material, method, or value. What's something you feel urgently needs to be dismantled or rethought?
All right, I guess I'll start. All right, so exactly what you were talking about, there's the land justice, social justice, and the material justice aspect of it. And it's an obvious thing that on the land justice side, there's a extractive system that treats land and material as disposable today. So as I said earlier, we've got tons of these material coming from the construction industry, and we're talking again about millions of tons. Now, it needs to be rethought about, because we have stopped for a while to think about the importance of circularity. And we don't believe also that as a human, we are quite circular. You know, the circle of life is based around that concept. And the fact that we are building huge, huge buildings around, and we treat it as a disposable culture, is going to hit the wall quite hard at some point, which we already have, I believe, personally. But it's a culture that's driving worldwide today with this sense of globalized culture and education. The other aspect would be the vast waste stream of construction and demolition. So where clay is buried and discarded. So of course it goes back to circularity, but the thought process of understanding what can you do with millions of tons? I mean, just think about it for a second. If we say as a basis that 30 million tons of clay is discarded every year and goes to other parts of UK, there is a displacement of land. I mean, that obviously means that the DNA of the land is being displaced. What do we do with it? It needs to be re-engaged fairly quickly. Social aspect side of things, you know, the narrative in the built environment to prioritize speed, profit, and newness over care, repair, and continuity. So again, it goes back to education. I get it. You know, I mostly lived in urban landscape, and the education is click, click, click. And all the early jobs that I had as a practitioner in architecture, it was about delivering projects because they are highly in increase, highly in demand. the budgets are high, the timelines are tight, into our educational system is present. So, you know, again, what we're doing by removing ourselves from these sort of setups and trying to it's not reinventing, it's slowing down, go through the rightful process and see if it works. And at the scale that we are in today, I know for Rescue Chlai it's working with a whole lot of struggle, obviously. It comes with downsides, but there's a lot of upsides that we can talk about later. And I know for Freya with Recollective, because we're neighbours in West London, is a similar approach as well. So yeah, that's what it covers for me, to be honest. And this is also a knowledge that by the practice that we're doing currently in Park Royal, all this information comes from the community of volunteers that are coming, so it's not a personal statement, and I don't think it should be a personal statement. It's a sharing discussion with everyone. The more people will come in and engage, it'll make more sense to it that the information is getting a bit more diverse and confirmed.
I think to touch on something that you just said there about education, in terms of, you know, looking at these materials, there's sort of still a stigma attached to it. You know, like the whole idea of, you know, cob building or earth building.
Playing with mud.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's great. I love it. But you know, they're old-fashioned. You know, these. You know, I read a lot of old books on sort of Welsh vernacular buildings, and a lot of it's written not by Welsh people, obviously, sort of in the sort of 19th century and early 20th century. Mud, you know, these hovels, these damp little hovels, you know, mud huts and whatnot. So there's stigma attached to it, you know, and you know, people who have had to live in these older buildings have, you know, see these big new buildings, you know, concrete, you know, dirty materials, and obviously they want to seem like they're going up in the world. So there's a stigma attached to it, especially from where I'm from, you know. You know, the materials aren't fit for today. You know, cement, it's harder, it's better. And kind of I wrote a little note earlier when I was kind of thinking about that. It's kind of almost like a patriarchal view. You know,
colonial as well, when they're thinking about cleanliness and the visual aesthetics.
Yeah, totally. You know. Just to touch back on the sort of patriarchal view is you know, is sort of that idea of, you know, a man emotionally needs to be, you know, the harder the better, you know, that sort of mentality. You know, whereas, you know, these materials are softer, they're slower, and dare I say, you know, across cultures, across the whole world, there is, you know, there's a femininity to earth building, for instance, and in a lot of cultures, it's the women that do the actual plastering, or the clay paints, or, you know, that aspect of it. So there's within sort of construction industry that mentality. It sort of we need to kind of dismantle it in a way. Yeah. So I think. Yeah, I find when I pull crews together, having females in the crew changes the whole dynamic of the working environment then, and that sort of toxicity that exists within the construction industry sort of it drops out really quickly.
I can imagine.
That's just one point, I suppose.
Well, I think that deserves a clap.
Yeah. So I guess I'll take a slightly different stance in terms of what we're working against, but it's all in the same vein. So I before I started Recollective, and even now, I have a sort of activist background. I have an architectural background as well, but that's what I bring to this. So my interest in Recollective is also in an activist sense that I enjoy working against things or proving things wrong. Maybe I don't enjoy working against them.
We love being difficult women.
But so Recollective, we're working against like consumerism, excessive consumerism, and usually that's like thinking about what you're going to throw away right at the end rather than thinking about it before you even buy the things. So we try and advocate for like the film production companies, for example, that produce the timber. They have accountability and they have a responsibility to deal with the timber that they bring into the world. That isn't seen at the moment, so we're fighting against that behavior. And yeah, so we want to challenge the thinking behind bringing the materials into the world in the first place, rather than just feeding off the bottom like little sort of capitalist vultures taking the bottom end of it. But working against those things is quite interesting because you end up sort of working yourself out of existence. Like if there was no waste, then we wouldn't exist. So we had a massive success and a massive failure all in one. We managed to secure 18 tons of material, which is like, one of those big trucks. And I put a solid month of unpaid work into securing this truck. And I was getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning to travel out to load this truck for like a week solid. And it left to go down to our location in Cornwall. And it got to Bodmin Parkway. And I don't know if you know your geography, but it's pretty close to Cornwall. And we got a call saying, oh, we've received your audit of everything, all the timber that you've taken away. Looks pretty good. We actually don't want to throw it away anymore. We want to take it back. So they turned the truck round and they took it back to their storage unit. And this is, I won't name. I should name the company, but I'm not going to. It may or may not have been Amazon Productions. Boo, boycott Amazon. But that nearly took me out completely because they pulled the rug out from underneath us. But it was challenging exactly what we were fighting for them to change their behavior about and change their opinion. So they were like, why are we throwing this away? This is insane. And that is our entire purpose. So I do like that story, even though every time I recount it, I do want to cry a little bit. But yeah, that's what we're fighting against. It's about the behavior change. It's about the consumerism, and our action might be moving timber from one place to another, but the intention of what we're fighting against is much deeper than that.
So that's just wild, by the way. I really like what you said about like the success and failure of it. The success, realizing, that company realizing that there were assets, and I hate that word, but let's be honest, that's how they see them. Yeah. And then the failure of that being that you didn't get to distribute that in the way that you would have wanted to. I think, like, with that in mind, like, regenerative practices, and I use the word regenerative rather than kind of generative, and in that we're like reusing, redistributing, resharing, relearning, re-remembering. What would you say that each of you are building towards? So in terms of thinking about regeneration, repair work or justice, what do they actually look like in your day-to-day work? Freya, you kind of touched upon it, but what's a day in the life of each of you? Like, let's tell the audience what that looks like and how many unpaid hours there might be and all of that kind of stuff.
A day in the life. It's all encompassing. I'm pretty much a one-person company who pulls in other practitioners depending on the size of the job. So there's constant education having to, when I'm pulling people in. A lot of people have an interest in it, and it means there's a lot of hand-holding, both on the client side and for people that I'm bringing in that are keen to learn, but also haven't got the skills quite yet. So, I'm kind of not just a craftsperson, I'm also having to be an educator in my day-to-day life. I'm also having to be a materials researcher. I'm also having to be an accountant. It's all encompassing. And some days, I'll get up at 7 and won't have finished until 12 at night sometimes. Because there's just trying to fit what I'm doing into this idea of a 9 to 5 work day. It's extremely difficult. But yeah, in terms of how I'm going forward with it, I would definitely, I think having discovered people like Civic Square in Birmingham, what they're doing is just it blows me away. It's so deep into what they're doing. I can't explain exactly what they do.
We need a separate panel for Civic Square. Write that name down, go Google it, search it, they're incredible.
Like research and look into them, because what they're doing is amazing. And I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with them on teaching their community clay plastering and things.
That's how we met, by the way.
But there's I've totally lost my train of thought there now. Going forward, I have lost my train of thought here now. Day in the life, I'll come back to it, but do you want to try and feed in somewhere?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so our everyday life is a bit... Where do we really start? It's an odd question. I wish I had a stable job, that's number one. Yeah, very different. So generally, as I said, we are community-led, right? So every end of a week, we make a post of people that are available, because nevertheless, if you have your regular day and night job, time is what you have most precious, and when that's available, that's what we cherish the most. To say that time is given to the purpose of the organization and the projects that we do. But that sort of setup is often seen as, just giving it a bit of time to support these very basic activities. But in our setup, it's really making physical projects happen. So we have a lot of projects aligned. The volunteers come in, we make the plan for the week. Those who are free, they come based on the activity of the week. So if it's processing clay, then we get around this massive bucket, we fill it with clay, with water, let it dissolve, sieve it once, sieve it twice. By God, it takes a lot of time and effort, but it's very holistic. And having people around you is almost very tribal, That's what our great-grandparents used to do with their community, with their tribe, sitting and sieving this flour for the bread, etc., etc. So it goes back into this sort of old behavior, probably because we can't afford a bloody machine as well. Sorry about the language. But we have to do with the moyens du bord. And another aspect then, we just don't make use of labor force by treating it as disrespectful force. It's very, very much valued. And when it goes from the processing, then it goes to testing it. So we research and design on the material, mix it with other waste streams that are coming from Park Royal. So that's an industrial area in West London where we're based, and we get waste from also film set industry, some random stuff like black sand. But we also, from regular industries, we can get stone, where they cut the stone panels, there's powdered form that comes, so it's a form of mineral. There's organic matter that comes from microbreweries, so like barley pulps, wood dust from carpenters. So we try to incorporate that so it becomes open source data for people, and we post it for free. It's absolutely not making any money or anything out of it. So people get to come and learn the skill to make. There was a tile making workshop, not workshop, but a whole season in August, where volunteers came, they processed the clay, we did the tile making together, and we made about 80 tiles, 70
Would you
basic.
say it was more like a skills exchange, Prashant, in that
Skill
you
exchange.
were teaching people how to process clay,
Yeah,
and in
yeah.
return they get to kind of, learn
participate
that, but
and-
also participate,
Yeah, and deliver projects that are quite meaningful. And the more we're going forward, the more we're getting these scaled projects, because this has to do with your networks as well. So because I've worked in 15 years in the architectural industry, I do come with a certain form of luggage that is important to put at the use of it. And so will any of the community that are part of the organization. That's what they do as well. And every penny counts. I mean, every little seed just values and give grander access to projects. And you'll be impressed if you come and have a look, because time is limited, obviously, but if you come and look and discuss, we can talk more about this, that where we're going and how we're doing this. But that's the kind of everyday pattern of our life since a while. But the other part of it, there's a reality, is that we need money to feed ourselves and our family. And that's the hardest part, because we're not making enough to generate income for stable salaries, for example. So we have that responsibility, individual responsibility, to go and find and sort this out and not make it a stressful, scary environment. Yet we share all the struggles that we go through in between us in our building. So yeah, hopefully that covers a bit the everyday reality that we go through.
Did you remember where you were?
I did. Yeah, I guess in a similar way, going forward is about sort of education and expanding, and collaborating with the systems that already exist, with who tend to have the money, even though less and less as it seems, but trying to bring what we're doing into sort of more formal education and stuff like that is definitely an avenue that I personally want to head in, especially in rural West Wales, where there's a massive need for that kind of skill set. But also, I absolutely love what Rescue Chlai is doing, because it's been an idea we've been playing around with some earth builders. Is just like looking at how do we create sort of localized sort of production factories, I suppose, where we are getting the waste material dumped to on our yard. We're able to process it into like maybe small batch plasters, or into repair blocks for cob buildings, so on and so forth, and looking at how feasible that is, because it is possible, and there's definitely something in that kind of idea where we don't need to look at it from a massive scale where we need a big old factory plant and 10 roller pan mixers. Sometimes it can be as simple as having a community to process the material and learn about it through that process. I think that's really powerful. Sorry, I'll let you talk now.
Yeah, day in the life, I guess. Varies every day. Quite difficult.
Sometimes building shelves for Rue.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess there was a bit of context that has been said, but maybe not clearly. So me and Prashant are in the same warehouse, and this is where Rue also did a lot of her pre-prep work for the installation downstairs. So that's why we're all winking and nudging at each other in terms of what we're doing on the
Inside jokes.
But yeah, day to day varies massively, just like everyone else, it sounds like. But it could be Recollective sort of manage the whole process of the material from getting it from the film set. So it might be driving vans and going in and loading vans full of timber, driving back across horrific London traffic, offloading the stuff into the warehouse, and then we audit everything. So we have like a labeling system. So every bit of timber gets a label. We've got a mega spreadsheet of everything that we have available. So that's quite time consuming, and denailing stuff, getting it ready to go out the door. It could be having conversations with communities that need the timber, and there's like an advisory role in that sense in terms of what timber can you use for your intervention, and trying to think about material first design. So this is a material that we have, what can we then make out of that, rather than a sort of more standard architectural approach, which would be, what do we want? Okay, we want this timber, we want this thing. And then it's like, okay, where can we get it? We can get it from Travis Perkins. We can get it from Far Eastern ply that's nice and cheap and like making huge deforestation in Singaporean forests. It shouldn't be that way. It should be, what have we got locally available and what can we make into it? So I go and visit communities or get on Zoom calls with them to talk about what they need. And then the sort of distribution side of that, they either come and pick it up, we deliver it to them, or on occasion, we will build stuff ourselves alongside design partners. We're part of that design process, the design and build process, alongside usually social designs are our main design partner, and social constructs are our main build partner. But we've worked with all sorts of different people. So sometimes it's warehouse-based, sometimes it's on meetings, sometimes it's driving vans around like a lunatic. Sometimes it's meeting with Civic Square, meeting Rue, meeting all of these different people. And like year on year, those relationships grow and everyone learns from each other. And it feels like we're sort of working towards the same thing, which is really positive. I love it. I'm very, very lucky to have such a varied day-to-day experience.
I think that's the thing that you just hit on right at the end, the joy. I know, like, it's a very difficult day to day in managing all of our schedules as activists, artists, creators, builders. The joy is knowing that you're shoulder to shoulder with other people in the community who are doing similar work in and around the UK in different parts, and what you learn from each other, and knowing that there are people trying to push this agenda as well. Very much kind of the like spaces that I've been working in, for example, with Civic Square or Wolves Lane, where I met Simon. We were helping with a community build, which was called Ubele, yeah.
Wolves Lane Centre.
Yeah, Wolves Lane Centre.
So Ubele,
yeah, and so they're another community initiative in North London. I'm really bad at geography. North London.
Yeah, Tottenham.
Thank you. And Civic Square got a bunch of us together from the Midlands and was like, who wants to learn clay plastering? We were like, yeah. And was like, Simon's going to be there, Simon from Calch Clay. And then here we are, and me and my partner learned how to clay plaster a wall. And it's as simple as that, if we allow it to be. Like an ancient, very old building technique, something that I probably would have grown up with, similar kinds of vernacular. And just the like pure sheer effort of bringing people together and then passing on that knowledge. There's nothing to gain from it other than the sharing of that knowledge, and you have so much fun on the way. Not just trying to sell this as a neoliberal thing, but
but like it's you know, when you look at different traditions, it's, you know, these buildings weren't built by like one builder. They were community builds. You know, we had a tradition in Wales, T Unos, which the community would come together and build a house in one night on common land, and it was, you know, it was an event. It was people would come together, and that's so important with using these kind of materials and doing, you know, pulling away from the
individualism and So I guess that kind of like leads to my third question, is what kind of makes this work? I think we've answered it, to be honest, so we can just carry on like talking. But to build differently, we often need different relationships with land, institutions, collaborators, and ourselves. What kinds of relationships support your practice, and actually what gets in the way?
Let's guess in the way.
Capitalism.
That was another question I had. All right, so we talked about the education side of things and the limitation on knowledge on this sort of approach. and material and way to work with it. There is a context here that, clay build or clay projects are associated outside of urban landscapes, so rural countrysides. And it's quite exceptional that we are in an urban landscape. We're getting the material from an unusual source, which is a construction site. And we need to really work on that re-education, and so associated with certain existing bodies, but it's deconstructing and reconstructing that relationship with education. With our current setup, it's harder to do, but there is a start, right? And we are linking up with universities, colleges, schools, primary schools, and it goes down to the roots of the child that grows up and the source of information that goes, how it goes, who participates in that, how do you own that sort of legitimacy on education. So that's one main topic. The second challenge is space. Being in a city like London and doing the project at the scale that we're doing, we need quite a big space. And that means associated costs. We have about 200 square meters of space we're using for clay processing, but also having a community space for people to work and create or gather around to make and to think, but that costs a lot. That would just out of the air, it would be like $5,000 a month. We can't afford that. We're not even generating anything close to it. And there's people like Johnny Brevin, who's, I don't know, how would you describe Johnny as a role in what he's brought to us?
A facilitator, I would say. He's
A nice landlord.
if such a thing exists. No, he is incredible. He's a facilitator of a lot of creative projects around Park Royal, and he's got the links at the top with all the people. He's able to play with space and make space available for artists and organisations like us, but he also organises a litter pick every week, and he's out there with his little gloves. He's a sound guy, basically.
He's very sound. And he's got vision through the other people that are surrounding him, which is great. He's not playing it or seeing it as a one-man show. But a lot has come out from him dealing with these people at the top, and we are in a warehouse that's what we call a meanwhile space. It was empty. It was going to be demolished so that they don't pay business tax on it. Is that right? Or land tax or something like that. And he fought hard to talk with the landlords to say that, look, there's a project that he can do until this building is going to be demolished and redeveloped. And we are there. We are there until probably next year, June, July. That's the current notice we have, and it's another culture as well, is to hop around and to see that these sort of formats are working, but we have to prove hard that these sort of projects are in, like Recollective, Absolute Beginners, Rescued Chlai, and all the other micro studios that are around us in the same building are making it viable financially and in terms of cause, rather than having a piece of land that's doing nothing in an industrial area where it's highly valued in terms of monetary value. So space, very important. And lastly is to interconnect communities. So community, yes, there's the aspect of individual human people that we're talking about, so local, but it's also corporations, businesses, organizations, profit, non-for-profit, and it's a lot to deal with and understand the mapping of all this organization, how they behave. So it's a slow process, but it has to be a hard punch to work with and not against, and understanding the language and the language of transition. It might be or might be not, but this is the current understanding that we're having with how our projects are getting light, etc. And the word collaboration is very key in this, and we often use it in our circle. And it brings you a sense of belonging, as simple as that. Not as a spotlight, but as unity. And it's really not all beautiful talk. We've practiced it for the last 9 months. It's been hard in the first 3-4 months, but as you see, we're sitting here today with Rue, And it was purely out of this sort of collaborative relationship that had no monetary intent, and ends up supporting these sort of spotlight projects in the V&A. And everyone has a role to dispatch and spread this sort of information. You can't control it, it happens. Part of it is very serendipitous, but we grab the moment, and it brings this sort of meetings to life and projects to life as well.
It's really interesting because I'm from Birmingham, and we ironically are across the pond. We also work in a studio called Minerva Works, which is also on a Grand Union Canal, similar to Prashant and Freya, and also have HS2 Chlai. However, our site is on hold, and so we have no idea, because it varies spot to spot, region to region, and from construction partner to construction partner. We have no idea where that clay is going, or whether it has gone somewhere already, whether it's already contributed to the 40% construction waste in the UK. But just like thinking, like we all come from an urban infrastructure, and you talked about space and people. I just wanted to skip across the pond to Wales, what it's like over there. In thinking about community, and in that kind of, the rural is often romanticised, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, it's difficult being. I mean, I see what people. I lived in Bristol for a while, and there's. Just the vast amount of people doing cool things, really pushing the boundaries and trying different things and having that space to fail. There's that possibility where you get people together. Where rurally, I mean, I live in there's 60,000 people in my county, which isn't a lot, and most of them are retirees. So there's not. There isn't that sort of energy to change things. A lot of people are just kind of getting by, so they don't want to change things, because otherwise that's going to rock the boat, and it's about putting food on one's table. Whereas I think how I kind of where I keep my hope and my spirit alive is through networks, is through sort of meeting folks like yourselves, all across the country. Networks like working with, and doing workshops with Ibuki, Earth Building UK and Ireland, which Clayfest is happening next week, if anyone wants to come along to that. That's kind of what inspires, so I can take it back to West Wales. I mean, we've got loads of space, but feels like there's no space, if that makes sense. We don't have the level of industrial sort of buildings that we can sort of repurpose. Most of our industry in West Wales is underground, and they're not very safe to repurpose, if that makes sense. It's a whole different challenge, I think. But I think by collaborating, that's the joy of this kind of working with these kind of materials, is that it's not a very competitive sort of space. It's really collaborative, and having groups and meetups and things like that is so key to advancement and different ways of thinking, and developing one's own craft, So I don't know if that answered your question.
It does, yeah. Freya, did you want to add anything? What kind of...
I've not got tons and tons to say, but I think something interesting, like off the back of what Prashant said in terms of the space, like the space we have, we're really lucky to have it. Not many people have access to that space. I think it starts to get interesting when you think about what's in the way and how do we get past it. So, like, it's a council-owned building, and there are key individual people in the council who made that possible for us to use. But they couldn't shift it as a rental area for such a short period of time. And they were also sort of looking for carbon figures for so that the council could say, oh, we've helped to offset X amount.
So you were greenwashing for them.
We're not greenwashing because we're actually doing it, and the space is facilitating that to happen.
Yeah.
So I feel comfortable in that sense. But me and Prashant were like, well, we track the carbon of what we do anyway. You know, like if you want the figures, we can give you the figures, and we want the space. You give us the space, and then there's there is no cash that needs to change hands there. You're getting something out of it. We're getting something out of it. Like our greatest successes over the last 2 years, and from Recollective's point of view, is when we've gone, well, wait a second, let's just think about a different way of establishing this relationship. And it comes with a massive amount of luck, and it comes with a massive amount of who do you know, and are there good people on the council who are invested in actually doing the right thing? It can't happen without those people. But that thing of thinking outside of the box and not being oh, we can't afford a space, so we can't do it. Basically, it's no, we need a space. How do we get there? And yeah, I mean, money is a massive one. Everyone knows it. Not going to go into massive details about that, but it'd just be nice if some people put a bit more faith in what we were able to achieve and just trusted the fact that we are well-intentioned and we know what we're doing. And B, I'll say it until the cows come home, it's the people that produce this waste should be paying to dispose of it responsibly.
Absolutely.
And we haven't done that. We haven't been doing that, so we need to advocate for that now, yesterday. So, and if we had a bit of cash between us, we've been going 3 years, we've never had an external investment for our core practice. We've done everything off our own backs, and we're 6 people in a WhatsApp group, and look what we've achieved. It should put corporations to shame that they should put a little bit of cash behind it. Yeah.
I think that kind of is your final reflection almost there as well. So I kind of wanted to leave the audience time for there's probably room for one question, sorry. But I want to leave on a statement and give the opportunity to Prashant and Simon to do so. So mine is to build to disassemble and not to demolish.
Yeah, I'll touch on a similar one, something like.
Put this on a tea towel, by the way.
Yeah. Are we making those sort of cushions?
Live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah.
Sort of phrases in a way. Yeah. To repair isn't, I guess, isn't kind of failure. Just because it's not shiny and new doesn't mean it's not actually. Probably the most radical way of designing is to look at something and see how can we
to
repair.
repair is to care. I'm really good at these.
I think you should write for me as well. In the last couple of months, a lot has been happening around land and people, and I really like that association of land and people. It's not hippified, it's not romantic, it's really important. We've had a workshop just about yesterday where we put all the materials, the waste materials and the clay on the floor, and it was an open walk-in workshop where people would come free, obviously, and they would touch and reactivate their senses by tactile. And don't forget who you are. You're a human being. It's not as simple as how you look or how you think or how you feel. Is activating a lot of your complex biology, and connect with those materials and let them send you information to your brain. And that association of word, of land and people is so important, and it reflects that complexity of who you are. So, do reflect back on yourself, not as simple as a statement, but more in words.
Get muddy.
Get muddy.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to our panellists. We might have time for one question. Don't all scream at once. Oh, here we go.
With difficulty, basically. I like this question because I think it's really important to be honest. So I'll just be honest. Like, I have a 2-day-a-week research placement that I work on, which is to do with changing policy behind this sort of stuff. So I'm really lucky to also have that in my back pocket. And there's a lot of crossover between research and practice. I pick up anything that I can get my hands on in terms of, as a freelance sort of researcher, I'd love to do more writing, that sort of thing. Our material sales contribute a little bit towards my wage, but it is challenging week on week, and I would hate for a panel of people, you know, an audience of people to be like, oh, why can't I do this? And it's not easy. I worked in the film industry for 2 years, got a bit of savings from that. We make it work, but it's different week on week, and my income varies massively. So I know that's maybe not the answer that you want to hear, but it's just honest, like it is hard.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, we share that quite often. Like we say, being self-responsible, we know that we need money to survive. We have some form of expertise background. So I was in architecture, so I go back to do part-time. But as the organization, we do lots of workshops, corporate workshops, private tutoring, not tutoring, but teaching, because we also have a ceramic studio, so that brings also people towards a cozy environment, awareness workshops, then we have festivals that goes on, and obviously commissioned projects, whether it's architectural or one-off, we make also out of ceramic, you know, bowls and glasses and cups, sold at a rightful price so that people can afford to buy one and keep that as an element to talk about.